Alright, so this iPhone 14 Pro in this deep purple color is deeply stunning. And I've had this for about a year now and kept it in pretty decent condition thanks to a case and a screen protector. And today, I'm going to give my review on whether or not it's still worth it in 2023. Hey, what's good? Prashil here with my take on the iPhone 14 Pro. Now, in the wake of Apple's 15 lineup release, I wanted to take a look and see how the older 14 Pro holds up. So to start us off, I want to get straight into the design. Now, the design itself is simply brilliant and very reminiscent of the older gen iPhone, which I genuinely prefer. The boxier design looks better and feels great in the hand. It's much more prominent and expensive feeling, as you would expect from an Apple device. Now, the boxier design also allows for more hardware to actually be crammed into the phone itself, which is always good for consumers. Speaking of which, you get 6 gigs of RAM, Apple's A16 Bionic chip with a whole bunch of transistors and black magic, leading to incredible performance from the get-go. Performance here is absolutely brilliant, not a stutter in sight. Games and other demanding tasks are easily taken care of without any issue whatsoever. All this is coupled with Apple's meticulously optimized iOS software, which makes for a great user experience all around. Now, I will mention one thing here, and that's whenever I'm playing games, really demanding games at that, or using Google Maps for a prolonged period of time, the phone does start to heat up. Now, it doesn't exactly overheat, but it gets very close to it, and I can see the battery starts to take a hit here, especially when I first got this phone and started using it in the beginning. Now, it has gotten better with software updates, but it's still a persistent problem that I encounter every now and then, so it is worth noting here. Alright, let's now move on to photography and videography with the iPhone 14 Pro. Looking at the rear, you get a 48 megapixel f1.8 primary wide sensor with sensor shifting optical image stabilization, a 12 megapixel f2.8 telephoto with 3x optical zoom, and a 12 megapixel f2.2 120 degree ultra wide. You also get a LiDAR depth scanner, which is useful for AR. Up front, you get a 12 megapixel wide-angled selfie cam. Now, photos out the gate with the 14 Pro are sharp with plenty of detail, and colors are definitely more true to life with the 14 Pro as opposed to the S23 Plus, which tends to try and artificially make colors pop more. Photos don't feel blown out with excellent dynamic range. I really like taking photos with the 14 Pro because it really doesn't take much to get the perfect shot, with the software side of things really taking care of you. Nighttime photography is simply brilliant, with again, the image processing being top notch and really working its magic with what little light you have to work with. Video is also great. You can shoot up to 60 frames per second at 4K in 10-bit with HDR enabled. The stabilization here when you're out and about is fantastic. Even when walking in the shot, it really feels like I was just gliding over. The sensor shifting optical image stabilization really comes in clutch here. So at this stage, I just want to mention that the battery life on the 14 Pro has honestly been pretty decent for the most part. Now, don't get me wrong, you actually can kill this phone in a day. I found that with 5G on, heavy navigation, as well as just playing a bunch of games, you can kill this device in less than a day. Especially when you have max brightness on as well. Now, the screen itself is great, gets plenty bright, and you get great viewing angles, which is always a plus, especially with Apple's Pro line of devices. But for the most part, when it comes to the battery, you can get up to a day's worth of usage with it, with a little bit of juice left in the tank. Alright, so what are my final thoughts on the iPhone 14 Pro in 2023, 1 year later? Well, I gotta say, even when the 14 lineup of phones came out last year, I said it before, and I'll say it again, the 14 Pro, for me at least, was always the one to get. Now, even with the newer 15 lineup being showcased right now, I personally don't really see that much of a gap between the 14 Pro and the 15 Pro lineup, at least not on paper. But that could change depending on whether or not I actually pick up the 15 Pro, and honestly, with a price tag that hefty, I'm not really too sure about that. Now, with the 14 Pro being about a year old now, the secondhand market is also pretty well established. I'm actually seeing a lot of refurbished iPhone 14 Pros on the market for about 950 USD, which is about 300 to 350 USD cheaper than the 15 Pros. And honestly, that's actually not a bad price, especially for a flagship that's only about a year old. So for me, I can honestly recommend picking up an iPhone 14 Pro. I think it provides a very solid Apple user experience. And honestly, for the money that you save by picking up the 14 Pro instead of the 15 Pro, you could pick up some AirPods or even an Apple Watch to complete your set. So this has been it for my 1-year review of the iPhone 14 Pro. Like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more content. But yeah, looks like we're out of time, so I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.